I was not in Stalingrad when this happened, not even close enough to pretend I understood what it was like to live inside that city by the end of 1942. I heard the story months later, beyond the Volga, in an improvised field hospital that had once been a school. The windows were boarded, the halls smelled of iodine and rot, and the walls cracked at night, as if the cold were trying to get in by force. The man who told it to me was a soldier who no longer knew how many times he had been wounded. He counted scars instead of dates. He spoke on a night when no one could sleep, when the guns were quiet just long enough to let imagination do worse things than artillery ever could. At some point during the night, someone walked down the corridor outside our ward, boots, slow and steady. No one ever reached the door. The soldier warned me before he began. He said he did not trust his own memory anymore. He said, Stalingrad broke time, broke sequence, broke the difference between before and after. He admitted that parts of the story might not be true. Then he said something that stayed with me. Even if half of it was a lie, the other half was still worse than anything he had lived through openly. The wrong thing he said was simple from the start. A building that should not have existed. It was winter, late in 1942. By then, Stalingrad was no longer a city. It did not function as one. Streets were irrelevant. Districts meaningless. The city had become a collection of rooms, stairwells, half walls, and cellars fought over at distances where you could smell another man's breath before you saw him. You did not advance along roads. You advanced from corner to corner, from doorway to doorway, fighting for places where you could kneel, reload, and live for another minute. His squad had been moving through what used to be an industrial block when the artillery began to walk the street behind them. Not shells falling at random, but deliberate, paced impacts, stepping forward with mechanical patience. Ahead, German machine guns stitched the intersections, cutting off any open movement. Staying where they were meant, dying slowly. Moving meant gambling. That was when they saw the building. It stood alone, a rectangular block of concrete, set back slightly from the street. No windows, no visible shell damage, no scorch marks. In a city where even gravestones had been shattered, it stood intact. The soldier said that alone should have been enough to turn them away. In Stalingrad, anything untouched was either newly built or already claimed by death. The door was intact as well, thick wood reinforced with steel, seated in a solid frame. It did not hang crooked. It did not gape open. It waited. He said there was no formal order to enter. The lieutenant glanced at the street behind them, at the way the explosions were creeping closer, and made a decision that felt reasonable in the moment. Shelter was shelter. They forced the door and went inside. The change was immediate. Outside, the cold had been dry and sharp, cutting the lungs with every breath. Inside, the air was damp and heavy, like it had been sealed for years. The smell was wrong to not rot, not smoke, but something stale and closed, like fabric left too long in darkness. When the door shut behind them, it did not slam. He insisted on that point. It sealed. The sound was final in a way he could not properly describe. Someone muttered that they had finally found a place the Germans had not destroyed. No one laughed. The corridor ran straight ahead, narrow, concrete walls sweating moisture, no windows, no doors branching off to either side, just a straight passage illuminated by the jittery beams of their lanterns. The first wrong thing, he said, was the sound. In Stalingrad, sound usually died quickly, swallowed by rubble or blown apart by open air. Here, every footstep came back intact, clean, as if the building were giving it back to them. They advanced only a few meters before the man at the rear turned to check the entrance. The door was gone. Where it should have been, there was only wall. Solid concrete, cold to the touch. No seam, no outline. The man struck it once with his fist, then again harder. The sound was wrong, not hollow, not cracked. Finished. They backed away together, 10 steps, then 20. Lanterns sweeping desperately across the surface, where the exit should have been. The corridor did not change. No doorway appeared, no frame, nothing. The lieutenant ordered calm and told them to search for another exit. But the soldier said the officer's voice was too steady, forced into discipline. His eyes kept flicking backward, as if expecting the wall itself to move. That was when they heard footsteps ahead. Heavy boots, even rhythm. Unhurried. The soldier said it did not sound like a German patrol. Germans moved cautiously in buildings like this, stopping, scraping, testing every step. This sounded like someone walking through a familiar place, comfortable. Then a voice came, close enough that they could hear breath between words. "Comrades, this way. Russianmail.com." The lieutenant demanded identification. The reply came immediately, without hesitation. Correct unit designation. A familiar name. A man who had been left wounded 2 days earlier and never recovered. According to records, that man should have been dead. The figure appeared at the edge of their light. Human. The soldier repeated that word several times when he told me this. Human. A red army coat blackened with soot, helmet cracked, face pale, but alert. No visible wounds. He raised one hand, palm outward, the signal for calm and silence. Behind him, the corridor seemed to slope downward, though no one remembered descending. "There's a basement," the man said. "It's safe. The door still works." No one fired. The soldier said that was the second mistake. They moved forward, drawn by the promise of shelter and trapped by the sealed wall behind them. As they advanced, the corridor narrowed almost imperceptibly. Shoulders brushed concrete. Breath grew thick and loud inside coats. That was when they noticed something else wrong. The echo no longer matched them. The footsteps they heard came back with a delay, repeated, but not quite aligned. The man walked ahead, always just beyond full light. When someone called his name, he answered without turning. The basement door was real. Rusted steel, crooked in its frame, cold enough to burn bare skin. When it opened, the smell came first: mold, rot, old cloth, and something deeper, older. Half the squad went inside. The lanterns flickered. They did not go out, only made the shadows move in ways that made the soldier feel briefly nauseous. The man who had led them vanished, and that, he said, was when the building truly closed around them. The basement was not a single room. That was the first thing they understood once everyone who had followed the door's promise stepped inside. It unfolded into a network of low-ceilinged storage spaces and narrow passages, some reinforced with brick, others cut directly into packed earth. The air was colder than above, but not cleaner. It carried the smell of damp fabric, rust, and something faintly sweet that none of them wanted to identify. When they turned back toward the stairs, the man who had led them was gone. Not retreating, not hiding. Gone in the way a light disappears when it is switched off. No footsteps. No shadow retreating. Just absence. The lanterns steadied, then flickered again. Shadows bent at the edges, stretching across walls where no corners should have been. Someone swore softly. Another crossed himself before remembering where he was and lowering his hand. They searched the immediate rooms first, calling the man's name. The replies that came back were only their own voices, delayed and slightly altered, as if the walls were learning how to repeat them. That was when they found the bodies. Not piled, not scattered, arranged. They lay in alcoves and against walls, seated or reclined, as if resting between duties. The cold had preserved them well. Uniforms from different years, different fronts. Red army coats beside German field gray. Some insignia were too old for the soldier to recognize, their designs unfamiliar, the fabric brittle with age. Faces were slack, eyes closed or half open, expressions calm enough to be unsettling. None showed signs of violent death. The lieutenant ordered them to move, to keep searching for an exit, to ignore what they were seeing. The soldier said this was when the radio crackled to life. Not static. Footsteps. The same heavy, even rhythm they had heard in the corridor above, transmitted cleanly through the speaker. Beneath it, Faint voices overlapped fragments of commands, names spoken without urgency, words that sounded almost conversational. Some were Russian, some were German. Others were in languages the soldier could not place, though they felt uncomfortably familiar. Above them, he thought he heard something move, a shifting of weight, a closing sound. Later, another survivor claimed the door never made a sound at all, that it was simply locked the next time anyone touched it. They tried to leave. The steel door at the stairs resisted everything they did to it. Rifle butts rang uselessly against it. They fired into the hinges. Sparks flew. The door did not deform. It did not even ring properly. It absorbed the impacts like soil absorbs rain. One man broke away down a side passage, shouting that he saw light. The lieutenant called after him, ordered him back. The man did not slow. The scream that followed was short, abrupt, cut off as if something had placed a hand over his mouth. Then they heard Boots stop, turn, and walk back the way he had gone. He did not return. The footsteps multiplied, from different directions, from passages that had not been there moments before. They did not run, they did not hurry. They synchronized naturally, like men falling into step without thinking. The soldier said that was when the lieutenant finally understood something essential. The building did not block exits at random. It guided. It used recognition, faces, voices, ranks to pull men where it wanted them. They withdrew deeper, retreating into the largest chamber they could find. The floor there was packed dirt, damp and uneven. The walls wept, moisture steadily, drops falling with patient regularity. Lantern light showed more bodies along the edges of the space, arranged facing inward, as if waiting for something to happen in the center. Figures began to emerge from the passages. Always human, sometimes familiar. A comrade lost weeks earlier, a German soldier they remembered shooting. Sometimes strangers with blank faces and correct uniforms, all moved stiffly, as if guided by a will that did not care about balance or comfort. They fired, bodies fell. Then they stood again. Movements were slower the second time, less coordinated, but persistent. Bullets tore fabric, shattered bone, removed faces. It did not matter. Whatever animated them refused the damage, dragging the bodies upright again with a patience that felt deliberate. The last lantern went out when someone dropped it while reloading. Darkness fell suddenly and completely. In the black, the footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was worse. In that silence, a voice spoke, calm, practical. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the walls, the floor, the bodies themselves. The soldier told me the words never settled properly in his memory, that each time he tried to recall them, they shifted slightly. But the meaning was clear enough. This place did not belong to any army. It was older than the battle, older than the city. It endured because it was useful, because war fed men who already expected to be erased. It offered shelter, direction, familiarity, and it took what was given. Someone screamed. Someone else prayed. The lieutenant tried to give an order and could not remember the words. The soldier did not remember how he escaped. He remembered light, daylight that burned his eyes, cold air that cut his lungs. He remembered being pulled from rubble by men who swore they had found him alone, half buried, nowhere near any intact structure. He remembered asking about his squad and being told there were no records placing them at that location. Above ground, the battle continued. Maps were redrawn. Units advanced or vanished. The building was never marked. Officially, no one was listed as missing at that address. The soldier finished his story quietly. He said that sometimes, when the wind cut just rightened, the guns fell silent for a few seconds. Men still swore they could hear boots moving beneath the frozen ground. Steady, patient, waiting. I do not know if that part is true. I only know that night in the hospital, long after he stopped speaking, someone walked down the corridor outside our ward, and no one was on duty at that hour.